Staying in Belgium, where European leaders have of course been meeting to discuss just how to get the EU's economies growing again. Our Europe correspondent Philip Williams joins us now from London. Phil, good morning. How are these talks progressing?
Well, they're going well as far as we know. They're still in progress as we speak, but really the emphasis is how do you cut and slash and burn deficits and reduce your debts at the same time, not affect the employment levels and give people the confidence that there's reason to invest. So far, that hasn't happened because for the last 2 years, many of the European economies have been intent on just cutting their budget deficits by any means possible, and at the same time haven't had the sort of policies that can encourage growth that are actually going to create employment that's then going to create the sort of income that's going to pay off the debt. So it's a vicious circle. So really this is really aimed at trying to somehow close that magic circle of cutting and slashing and burning on one part of the economy, but at the same time getting the rest of the economy going. This public-private sector battle, and it really hasn't worked here in Britain so far. For example, David Cameron, who is pushing very, very hard at the summit right at the moment to get this growth going, hasn't managed at home, where he said, look, we're going to cut all these public service jobs and reduce the deficit here in Britain, and private industry is going to take up the slack. In fact, there are going to be even more jobs. Well, the slashing and burning's happened, but the take-up in the private industry simply hasn't followed, and so you've got manufacturing industry, for example, in the last quarter going backwards by 1.5%. So this is the challenge. And of course, the challenge here in Britain is minuscule compared to, say, Spain, where 50% of the young people are unemployed and 23% of adults are unemployed, and such an enormous drain on the economy. We've got not just the drain from the social security point of view, but there's no hope at the moment of any jobs being created in sufficient numbers. There's no sense that these countries that have such a huge burden and an increasing burden of unemployment, that somehow they're going to get out of this hole, and that's partly what this summit's all about. It's also about Greece, of course, trying to sort that out. And now, of course, there's the added worry, increasing worry, of what's going to happen in Portugal now that bond rates have gone through the roof there, and it looks like almost heading to a Greece-like situation. So far from out of the woods, but at least there is intent to try and improve particularly the unemployment situation. And
on the issue of Greece, how close is that country to securing a deal to stave off what could be a looming default?
Yeah, well, look, many people still say, many in the market still say default is inevitable. The numbers simply don't add up. Even if you get this cut of 50% in the debt from private bondholders and from governments, that Greece is still in a position where they simply can't pay it back, and they will have to inevitably leave the EU and go back to the drachma. Well, the Germans in particular are determined that won't happen. They see that as a disaster scenario for the Eurozone, and they're hanging on grimly. But as for these talks, they've been dragging on now for weeks and weeks, and appear sometimes to be getting somewhere, and then we hear that nothing's happened. So we're really in the dark at the moment. What we can say is there's no deal on the table. Are we a day closer to agreement? Yes. Are we a day closer to failure? Perhaps. We simply don't know, but the uncertainty continues, and as uncertainty breeds uncertainty in the markets, that certainly doesn't give confidence that Eurozone, particularly where Greece is concerned, is sorted. The question then is, can you jettison Greece without that knock-on effect throughout the rest of Europe? Some people think you can, some people think you can't. In fact, some in the markets, one person I spoke to today said the sooner it happens, the better. But we simply don't know yet whether that will come to pass. What we do know is that the talks are ongoing. These talks should have been wrapped up weeks ago.
And finally, union leaders in Brussels, Phil, have, I suppose, imposed their own austerity measures of a type on leaders. Those strikes seem pretty widespread, don't they?
Yes, and this is the biggest general strike that they've had in Brussels for many years, affecting all forms of transport, and even the EU leaders have had to use a military base to even get to this conference today because the normal airport really isn't available. Yeah, they're making their message felt, and Brussels again, and particularly Belgium, is affected by this crisis too, because they have enormous debts. They have banks that have been teetering on the edge. Dexa is one of them. And so they are in the centre of this storm and by no means out of the woods either themselves. So you don't have to go far when you come to an EU summit in Brussels to see the problem.
Phil Williams in London, thank you very much for the update.